Hi everybody, welcome to today's webinar. My name is McKay Allen. I'm the Inbound Marketing Manager at Log My Calls, and this is our first webinar of 2014. I am still getting used to saying 2014 as opposed to 2013. So we're really excited you're here, and we're really excited that Josh, founder of Clever Zebo, has agreed to join us as well today. The topic is a good one. I think it's appropriate for the start of the year, and we're really excited to present it to you. First, a few announcements before we get started. The first thing that we want you to do is make sure you get involved in these webinars. Ask questions throughout the presentation. If you have a question, just ask that. I'll interrupt Josh and ask him the question that you have, and he can address it. He told me beforehand that you're free to disagree with him and even argue with him. And so if you want to start a fantastic argument with Josh, go right ahead. I'll facilitate that argument. The other thing to note is the way you ask questions. Just type those into the little question bar on your GoToWebinar screen there. And then also, please notice on your screen you're seeing our webinar page, logmycalls.com/webinar. And you see today's webinar with Josh. We have about 2 webinars a week. Tomorrow we have Frederick Valais. He's the co-founder of Optimizer and a former Google employee that worked on AdWords. His expertise has appeared in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, NPR, CNN, and a variety of other places. Really learn about AdWords from a Google insider. This is an opportunity to do so. And then you can see a few of our other webinars that we have coming up as well. So we're excited Josh is here today. I think we've done 1 or 2 webinars together, Josh, and we're excited that he's joined us. The only other note before I actually toss it over to Josh is that this webinar is being recorded, and that recording will be emailed to you tomorrow morning. So just be aware of that. Watch for that email so you can watch the webinar again. And then also share that on social media, talk about it within your organizations, and share that content internally. The final thing is sometimes people ask, why do Log My Calls do these webinars? Log My Calls is a call tracking and call analytics company. So we provide data to marketers about which ads, campaigns, and keywords generate phone calls, and even more importantly about what happened on the call. So which campaigns are producing appointments or closed deals or demos or whatever your action item is on the phone call. We can tell you all that data. And the reason we do marketers is because our audience is marketers, and we wanted to provide useful, or marketing webinars is because we wanted to provide useful content to our audience, which is marketers. So that's why we have experts like Josh join us. So with that, I want to briefly introduce Josh. He is the founder of Clever Zebo. I believe they're based in Los Angeles. He can clarify if that's not accurate. But he's worked with companies like Aeropostale, Sandals Resorts, Fathead, and he built Clever Zebo in reaction to over-channelization he saw in online marketing agencies and departments. So this created an alternative for people who were tired of overpaying specialists that were really missing the larger revenue picture. And that's something we preach as well, is that everything has to go back to revenue ultimately. So Josh, we're really excited you're here today. Thank you for joining us. And let me, sir, give you control of the screen.
Thanks. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
All right, good. And now let's just make sure, is He-Man a big image in the shared screen?
He-Man is on the screen, yes.
All right, cool. So yeah, you know, I could make up some reasons of why I have He-Man there, but honestly, I just think he looks cool, and like, let's all be He-Man with our conversion funnel. I guess that's the point. So thank you all. Thanks for having me here, McKay. I love hanging out with you, and I'm excited to have the discussion. You know, I think you really got. Oh, by the way, we're based in San Francisco. Company was started in Los Angeles, then we moved to San Francisco.
Gosh, I'm 0 for 1. I'm 0 for 1. I apologize.
Cool. And I'm curious, where is everyone joining from, just real quickly? If you don't mind just typing in, and then McKay, just shout out. I'm curious where everyone's based.
You bet. We've got New York City. We've got Los Angeles. We've got Richmond, Virginia. We've got Salt Lake City, Denver, North Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina. So all over the map. San Clemente, another Orange County guy from down there, Virginia, Atlanta, so all over the place.
All right, cool. Well, you East
Canada, fantastic.
East Coasters, I'm from New York, and my love goes out to you. I know you're battling cold and some pretty rough conditions. So first, let me just tell you where this webinar and this concept came from, the spark of the idea. and then we'll get into the actual concept. You know, I've been an online marketer for nearly 10 years. It's 8, 9, 10, it depends how you want to count. Let's just call it somewhere between 8 and 10. And when I started marketing, I was really focused on organic search. And it was amazing, man. You know, like back in the early 2000s, you could stuff keywords, you could focus content, you could just send lots of links to one page. It didn't matter how it looked, it didn't matter how relevant it was. You could have, you know, tens of thousands of links coming from random sites in China and India, and it was all good. That was the way to do things. And Google really has, they've really cleaned up their act, and with the Panda and Penguin updates in particular, really started saying that, you know, we don't want you to game the system, and that in fact we want your user experience to be the best possible. And you know, I could tell you several anecdotes, but the bottom line realization became, wow, Google is no longer a system that we can game. In fact, what Google is overwhelmingly telling us, and what the data shows me, is that I need to focus on my user's experience, not on who I want to, not my agenda, but the user's agenda. And seeing, you know, I've known for a while that A/B testing was important, that landing page optimization was important, but there was something when Google really started to reinforce this point in organic search that it dawned on me that the conversion funnel is really everything. And not just in terms of, you know, getting more visitors on a page to convert to a customer, not just in getting more traffic from an organic search keyword, but really everywhere. And that the conversion funnel extends. It's not just that first page they come on, whether it's a dedicated landing page or a home page. It's not just the checkout page. It's the referral that brings them in. It's what happens on your Facebook page. It's what happens in a discussion on Twitter about your brand, and if there's a related hashtag, it's the emails you send out to people when they come through a confirmation page. And so when I started to think in those terms, it really opened my mind to a whole world of possibilities. So I guess, you know, if you take nothing else away from this session, it's that I think it's important to see everything you do digitally as your conversion funnel. It's not just your website or your app, it's everything. It's your entire footprint, even the things you can't control. That's my big point. I'm going to give you some pitfalls of how you can fall into getting over-channelized or overly narrow. I'm also going to give you a few ideas on how to actually build out. I'm going to show you a simple process for building out intelligently and lovingly parts of your conversion funnel in a way that really looks at the complete picture. And then I'm going to give you my recommendations on tools that you really need to use to manage your complete conversion funnel. All right, sound good? I'm going to assume yes, because I can't see anything or hear anything, but maybe everyone's sitting like, yeah, good, let's go. So hopefully it's like, yeah, go, He-Man, go. All right, next. So if any of you have ever done a webinar with me recently, you'll notice that I've gotten really addicted to this quotation. Jim Manzi basically was running experimentation at Google. And what's so interesting about this is that, man, these like the greatest optimizers in the universe at Google ran 12,000 randomized experiments, but only 10% of those led to business changes. So there are two takeaways. The first one is the one I usually talk about, which is that, you know, you just have to keep testing. Test, and then sometimes you're going to stumble into things that work, sometimes not. The second part, though, the second implication is that what matters is a business change. And that's why I think this quotation ends with business changes. Everything we do on our website, in advertising, it comes back to what's actually going to have a bottom line impact. So we'll get there in a second. I just want to make sure you guys, McKay, you gave me a good introduction. You know what? All that's important here, if you want to reach out to me, Josh at Clever Zebo, or hit us on Twitter at Clever Zebo. Would love to hang out with you. And again, if you do want some help for your conversion funnel, if you want to just have a conversation or work on an engagement, I'd love to talk. So Josh at Clever Zebo on Twitter. All right. So by way of introduction to getting to what really matters in the complete conversion funnel, I want to show you a case study that I thought was really interesting. So hopefully everyone is familiar with a company called Unbounce. It's just an awesome landing page creation tool. They ran what I think is a really interesting experiment. So there are two versions here, and if you guys don't mind just quickly telling me, Kay, which version you think won. The basic idea is let's try and get this course for a tweet. So you click get it for a tweet, and then you tweet, and then you go and get this 6-month course. In version B, you have to give your email address, and then you click download now, and you get the guide. So which of these two approaches do you think did a better job of growing Unbounce's list of interested prospects?
Most people are saying A, overwhelmingly, Josh.
Okay, cool. And why? What are some of the reasons why? Why A?
Why, everybody? Type that in. Okay, didn't have to give an email, so just get it for a tweet. People hesitate with email, don't want to give email. Tweeting's faster, easier, more immediate. So that seems to be the overwhelming reason is you can just tweet it and get it.
And here's what's so interesting. So when Unbounce ran a survey before, so the reason why they even ran this test is they ran a survey. And they sent this survey around to a whole bunch of their customers, and everyone said the same thing as you guys. They said, oh yeah, tweet's easier, great. But when they actually looked at, and initial findings found that, oh yeah, people are more likely to click, great. But the problem is when they actually looked at which of these two approaches did a better job of driving customers or even just driving people who could now be marketed to again in the future, it was there was a 22% higher conversion rate for the email collection method. So two things. First of all, if you were just to look at say an intermediate metric such as clicks, you might have been misled. One of the things but even if you were to look at the actual performance metric, one of the big problems here is that it's very easy for people to delete or ignore tweets. So while there was some interaction, when you actually look at what drove the business forward, overwhelmingly email was a more important method. Any questions or thoughts here before I keep moving?
Not really specifically on this. People just seem to think, yeah, the tweets would have worked.
Yeah. So this is one of those. This starts getting to the core of what I want to talk about, and I sort of use this first study as a riddle, and I don't know that there are answers here, but we should start thinking about, well, what is it that's actually happening? It's that we want people to take the 6-month course so that ultimately they actually build a landing page. And social media, it's hot, there is interaction, there are things that happen, but when you look at the actual numbers, email marketing as a direct channel is just so incredibly effective at driving conversions, at driving the business. So this is one of those areas where we really have to think about what's going to drive the business. Now, if they hadn't tested, they would have never known. But I think the thought I want to instill is as we build out new marketing opportunities, let's think about what's going to move people in a way that we have a strong connection. In this case, for Unbounce, it was email. All right. Here, I'm just going to give you some numbers about a test that was run. This is another example, and I want to make a slightly different point here. Again, this is some more purgatory. So we have a test that has 100% confidence rating. By the way, for any of you A/B testers out there, do you know why when you see 100% confidence rating you should be uncomfortable? Anyone writing?
Not really. No.
All right. So
because there are no outliers, nothing's 100%, nothing's absolute.
Yeah.
Basic
Yeah,
stuff.
good. That's basically it. Statistically, it's not. You can't really have a 100% confidence rating. You can have a 99.999, but statistically, 100% when testing is meaningless because there always could be as whoever wrote outlier said, there always could be an outlier. There always could be an exception. All right, this test had a 570% conversion lift. The problem, though, is that there were 4 versus 16 conversions on only 500 visitors. This is one of those examples where there just wasn't enough data. So here's the other point I want to make. One of the things that we often find as we are doing optimization work or as we're looking at very specific parts of our funnel is that we might look at those flashy numbers. Let's say we run a landing page A/B test and we see, oh my God, 100% confidence rating, 500% conversion lift. Whoa, this needs to be the new message. This is what we should go with. The problem in this situation is that you just don't have enough data. You're only talking about a handful of conversions. And by the way, these were low threshold conversions. These aren't conversions where you're spending lots of money. They're very low threshold. But it's a small visitor pool. And so I really want to caution you that you might think that 100% confidence rating means like, oh my God, this is going to revolutionize my business. In fact, if you make a decision based on this kind of test, you might actually be harming things. So it's another word to the wise. We'll come back to this as a concept. Here's what I really do want to, here's what I want to push as what we're trying to get at in the complete conversion funnel. First of all, we want more quality customers. By the way, I know this may sound obvious to some of you, and sorry if I'm harping on an obvious point, but it's amazing. I've worked with hundreds of startups, companies who have been around for a long time, different stages, and it's amazing how often people will not necessarily focus on what matters. So we want more quality customers. We want more of those guys to actually purchase. So there might be some people who first come in with a free offer or they download something. So now we want to get them to purchase. And then we want a higher percentage of them to come back. And whenever you do any testing or you launch any marketing initiative, I really recommend that you start with how do I measure? It's not just, yeah, I want more quality customers. How do I actually measure that? Is it a goal that's tracked in Google Analytics? If I'm using a marketing automation system, is it a metric there? Where is it? Which report do I look at that metric? And then really run things from that perspective. Are we good, by the way? Any questions, or can I keep rolling?
No, there's a good comment on just measuring before you start an activity. The gist essentially is agreeing with you that it's silly when marketers start down the road of tactics before they figure out, okay, what am I trying to measure? What does success look like? So I think your point's good there. So yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Great. So here are 5 of the pitfalls I often see folks do when looking at their conversion funnel and thinking about how to improve their digital footprint. And I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about them. And if any of you guys have thoughts or comments or questions, would love to hear them. So the first one I think we've now touched on is when there's a focus on intermediate metrics. Like, I'll tell you, nothing drives me crazier than when we're looking at an AdWords campaign or at an Outbrain or a LinkedIn campaign, and the conversation goes to, oh, well, the click-through rate was great here, or we look at an email campaign, man, great open rate. Now, admittedly, a good click-through rate can be indicative of great stuff. We all know that Google's quality score algorithm really looks at click-through rate as an important metric, and there's a good chance that if click-through rate is strong, that it's going to mean that we have a lower cost basis. But it doesn't, in and of itself, it doesn't mean anything. We could have an incredible click-through rate and spend $10,000 and have no conversions because we've done a great job on the ad copy but brought them to the wrong landing page, or we bring them to the right landing page but we're in the totally wrong segment. This is not the segment for our product. So that's the first one, intermediate metrics. Secondly, and this goes to whoever made that comment, I really think that we need to make sure that we have proper tracking analytics in place. And by the way, we're going to go through what I recommend as the tools in a second, so I will make this more specific. But if you can't answer to yourself what is it that I'm driving toward? Is it a lead? Is it a conversion? Is it a phone call? Then you're in trouble, and you need to point to which tool it's in. Okay, the third part, and I'm actually going to go into this in a second a little bit more depth, is sacrificing brand, where you need to follow your gut on what your business is. It doesn't matter what I say in this presentation or what, how many case studies you read. If there's a principle, even if someone else has gotten it to work that sacrifices your brand, don't do it. Because you have to remember, and I'll show you this in a second, that there's this whole realm of conversation about your product and service outside of what happens within your control. You got to A/B test. That there are certain changes you have to make just because, oh man, we have to make this a better experience. But if you ever have a major messaging change, or you're changing the flow in the product or service, or let's just say you do want to optimize how, say, a more specific channel works, A/B testing is really, really vital. It's what allows you to know, yes, this change made a difference or not. Otherwise, it's always just a gut feel, and you can talk authoritatively, but you don't have something to back it up. Final thing is that re-engagement is critical. So many companies focus so much energy on advertising, on press, on phone calls, on getting people in, and then they do nothing in terms of retargeting or email follow-up. So I just want to stress that getting people into the funnel is the first part, but that's not where it ends. The funnel is the entire lasting relationship that you have with those customers. Okay, and just quickly to illustrate that point, I think of that there are really three fundamental phases of the conversion funnel. There's pre-tracking. So that might be like, someone refers their friend to your site. There's no tracking there. They've come. Now, there could be actually some tracking. It might be research sponsorship. Then there's when you start getting into the world of control. So you've created an ad. You've created a piece of content that someone now downloads. And then you've gotten their information and you're re-engaging. The conversion funnel, trying to track all of these elements is important. Now, admittedly, pre-tracking makes things harder, but you can do things such as surveys and asking questions to understand how someone got to you that can really inform, especially if you're a B2B business or where you have more phone interaction. Tying in your CRM how someone got to you with the things that are under your control can be really valuable. Any thoughts there?
Just to piggyback on what you said, Josh, I could not agree more that you have to worry about re-engagement. I think sometimes we worry so much about landing pages and optimization that we don't stop to think about what happens next. And then I really also like how with re-engagement you have various methods. I think so often and too often we think about nurturing as just an email activity. It's something that is only done via email, but there's a ton of ways to cultivate and re-engage with prospects. Phone being one of them, retargeting. We've seen a ton of success with retargeting. And I think having a very robust and differentiated strategy is important. So yeah, just to piggyback off what you said.
Cool. By the way, I want to let you guys know, I thought this was going to be 20 to 25 minutes, and I need another 10 minutes. So is that okay, McKay?
You're perfect.
Okay, great. All right. This, by the way, I just want to show you a quick little strategy for how to orient any. If, let's say, you want to build out a new element of your conversion funnel, I'm just going to give you the example of a page on your website. I just want to give you a process for how to do it from what I consider to be a complete conversion funnel perspective. Again, it's simple, but I found it to be really effective. Number one, set goals. It should always be the first thing you do. Again, it's whether you're creating an ad campaign or a Facebook page or your LinkedIn profile or any element on the site. What is the metric for success? The second thing that's really important is to, now once you've defined these questions, you're good to go and you can reuse them. But who are we? What do we care about? What value do we offer? I want to use the example of actually my firm, Clever Zebo. It's the easiest one. I launched the company 3 years ago, and it was just like, oh my God, I want to have my own company. And I threw up a website, and I put some thought into what the product and service offering was, but not a lot. I basically got, and I'm an online marketing firm. I got a lot of feedback. Oh man, this is ugly. What are you guys doing? You're not communicating yourselves at all. So we went through this process of really defining these questions, which took some time. But what that led to, oh, and also one other thing there, how are people finding us? This is really, really important. I think often we worry about every use case. We worry about all the different ways that all the different people who could find us. I really recommend, some folks call it building personas. I really recommend zeroing in on who is your core constituency. And maybe there are a couple of different flavors of core constituency, but as you're building anything, understand who are really the folks. Is it going to be that they're coming through emails to your email list? Is it that you have a really engaged social following? Is it primarily a paid strategy? Because that can impact what you're doing. Always recommend, by the way, just using, and this is what this image is here, just go and build out in like pen what that page should look like. And even if you're a designer, but especially for a lot of us who have to work with a designer and developer to implement any processes, my God, when you write copy and then have it go into an actual wireframe, it takes out so much of the back and forth process. So literally, this is what happened. We had this written diagram, and then we come here and we're able to build this really beautiful page. It all came out of that writing. Any process you go through, always assume that you're going to be tracking it and testing it, but more importantly, that you're going to keep analyzing and optimizing. Now, we've gotten pretty good feedback on this page, so we're happy for now. There have been a few things that people didn't love, but we're constantly checking in with analytics, seeing how it's doing. Is this driving leads? Are people engaged? Are they leaving the site as a result? So that's my quick little process. Any questions there before I get to tools that I think you should be using?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I really think that there are seven basic areas, and I'm going to throw out a few names of products. You may already have some of those products. I think in some ways most products end up doing the trick, but there are differences in price and user interface, and some folks do have more functionality. So number one, obviously, is web analytics. I really think the Google Analytics should be on every site. Even if you have Kissmetrics or Mixpanel or other analytics solutions, I really think having web analytics, Google Analytics with conversions tracked it's a no-brainer. It just serves as a base point of what to look at in the future. I also think having a marketing automation tool. Now, if you just want to have, say, an email tool, in my case, we actually just use MailChimp. And we found that that's actually really effective. I think that for some of you more larger businesses where you have a sales team and multiple touch points, I would consider using a tool for the larger organizations like Marketo. If you want a less expensive solution, there's Pardot and there's LoopFuse. And that if it is a big sales operation, you probably want to have CRM attached. You know this stuff. Now the next one is heat mapping. For a long time I was not a believer in heat mapping. I said, oh, is that really important? Why do I really need it? And I've just become a big convert over the past, I would say, 18 months. When you look in web analytics and your marketing automation tool, you get a sense of the flow of people through different pages, but you don't really know why. You don't know the why. And this also gets into user videos. And by the way, user videos where you take a recording of what people do going through pages. It's really interesting to see how someone's interacting with a page or a series of pages. Again, web analytics are just aggregating data. They're not talking about what happens on a per user basis or really even a per experience basis. At the end of the day, maybe heat mapping and user videos only are going to inform one or two key insights, but those can be insights that really change the game for you. I also think, obviously, A/B testing. Oh, and by the way, for heat mapping, I'm sure everyone has heard of a tool called Crazy Egg. There's another tool, Lucky Orange. It's really inexpensive. It records user videos. It gives you heat maps, and you can actually do chat with people who are on the site. You can see what people are doing on the site. So check out Lucky Orange. I think that's a really great, quick tool to install and use. A/B testing, I think right now that the two guys who are doing the best stuff are Optimizely and Visual Website Optimizer. You probably know that Google Analytics has built-in functionality also. I would just be, and this is on the website, you should be A/B testing in email. By the way, if you want to know where to start A/B testing in email, I would start with your subject lines. and then you can move to copy, and then maybe later, if you have a large enough list, you move to the landing page. But building out your A/B testing program, it's critical. It's what's going to allow you to know what messages work. There are complexities there, again, longer conversation, but the next thing is a customer feedback tool. I actually showed you a little Qualaroo pop-up. There are lots of ways to do customer feedback. Now, you can use something like Qualaroo, which pops on your site. You can, one thing you can use, you can send surveys via email or even out socially. Another way to do customer feedback that I think a lot of people forget is just in your customer service process. If you have them on the call already, why not just go and ask them a few questions, have your reps ask a few questions on what they thought of the site, what they thought of a particular experience. And finally, phone analytics. It's one of the reasons why I just love what Log My Calls is up to, is that for those of us who have businesses, and I'm assuming a lot of folks on this call do, where phone is an important part of the process, web analytics and marketing automation and even a lot of A/B testing, none of these are telling us anything about how our phone calls are going. They're not telling us what that actual experience is. Now, admittedly, CRM, our reps can write notes, and that's the closest we get. But that doesn't actually get into the real experience. So, McKay, I'll let you talk more about phone analytics, but I'm just really impressed with what you guys have done. And I think for anyone where phone is an important part of the business, I really recommend looking at some of the new tools that Log My Calls has built. Any questions or thoughts there before I get into the last case study?
The only thing I'll add to, Josh, if I may, to what you said about phone analytics is a lot of people say, well, phone isn't important to me. Just a couple of data points to throw at you. First, pretty much any industry besides e-commerce, and even a lot of e-commerce places have call centers for help and whatnot. But most businesses get some volume of phone calls, and a lot of businesses, particularly local type businesses, that is the #1 lead source for them are phone calls. So keep that in mind. And then the second thing is phone calls, on average across all industries, convert 4 times more to customers than one web lead does. So someone fills out a form, it takes 4 form fills to produce the value by one phone call. So long story short, even though you may get a few phone calls, they're very valuable, and it's useful to analyze the data that comes out of those. So go ahead, Josh.
Yep, great. Okay, I want to show you guys a quick case study. I'll show you why in a second. Let's just launch into it. So this is Avis UK, and they ran a really simple test. So just look at these two, and I'll talk you through it. But A or B, if you don't mind just typing in when you think you have the answer. You can see A has some more steps, but it really has a message: car hire delivered to your front door. It's front and center. B, it leads with $16 a day. What do you guys think? What A or B, and why?
Let's see. We've got the exact split so far. B seems to be winning because it's simpler, more clear as to exactly what the calls to action are and what they want people to do. And then people seem to be confused by the 3 sort of articles or banners at the bottom of A.
Yeah, great. And by the way, a question that I would recommend everyone ask, and admittedly, maybe I should have just told you this at the beginning, but that I would ask is, well, what's the traffic source? That goes back to my question, what I was talking about in terms of the complete conversion funnel, and really understanding where are people coming from, who are they. Is the source here this is paid search, this is paid traffic. And these pages have to be aligned with what someone's actually searching for, which city, possibly which kind of car, maybe they're talking about something that's price sensitive. So the winner was B, and it was a huge lift, 74% lift in completed bookings. I think that everyone who talked about B as being simpler, you got it right. That's exactly it. One thing in particular, and again, this is where I think, oh, and by the way, Avis ran I think 170 different variations. They did a huge amount of testing. But one of the big reasons I think B won is that it led with the price, and I know as someone who tends to rent cars that price is usually, it's hugely important. Also, the simplification part of things is an enormous point. Here we can see simplification just on one page, but thinking in terms of the complete conversion funnel, I would encourage you to look at how you can simplify the entire flow. Every click you remove from the process, and it's great. Everyone who said that, at the bottom of A, there are these 3 articles, what do they have to do with everything? They don't have to do anything. Those aren't going to get you to go and rent a car now. Again, the idea, it's not to necessarily let you know more about Avis, which is what their homepage is responsible for. In this case, someone's looking for a car, let them get their quote. Big buttons, simple options. So yeah, respect the customer flow. That's my presentation for now, guys. If you have questions or you want me to go back to anything, happy to speak to it.
Yeah, there are a few questions coming in here. Let me read some to you. So the first landing page experiment you talked about, have you seen or done tests where someone will do sort of a combination where you put in your email and you have to tweet something, or are those combinations too challenging or not worthwhile enough? What would you say about sort of combination calls to action like that?
So, I don't have data on that specifically, but I have seen some initial findings that, let's say that someone can log into your tool using email address and or social logins and what works well. And again, I don't know that I've seen definitive results, but it does seem to be that it can work well having the combination of email and a social login. And I think that, the reality is that not everyone is quite comfortable even today with social logins, so giving that option is good. But I think that the combination is strong. The one thing I would caution you is that overwhelmingly what I have seen to be true across tests is that the fewer calls to action, the fewer distractions, the more you do what you see in this Avis example of just push them to get their quote, push, 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 that tends to have a better impact. So if you are going to use combo calls to action, be very careful and do it for a very good reason.
The other question / comment that a couple people have made actually is that if I can crystallize this down, is there seems to be sort of this person believes sort of a very significant focus on like the number of fields that you have somebody fill out on a landing page, when in reality it's all about the targeted nature of the audience that is coming to the landing page. So the landing page isn't necessarily the most important element of it. It's how well you target and track and adjust. What are your thoughts on that generally, and then maybe more specifically about what that individual is saying about the number of form fills is sometimes over-analyzed? Such a good point.
Such a good point. So I first want to give you a principle, and this is something I believe to be true. And I know there is some data that proves me wrong, but I'm just going to say this is my feeling. I think that we should always strive as soon as possible in the process to collect user information, because you can't re-engage with anyone without that user information. So I do think up front, getting their email address and or a social login as a first step and nothing else is smart. I literally cannot really imagine a scenario in which that's a bad idea, unless you absolutely, I can't imagine which that's a bad idea. But once you've gotten that initial information, now I think simplicity becomes somewhat less important. Now you might say that a qualified lead isn't until you get their phone number, their industry, and their company name, etc. So you go and get that. Afterwards, I really think that what's important is it's the flow and the experience. Now, it used to be that there were long load times between web pages. It was really hard to have a seamless experience. So one of the reasons why you would want to have fewer pages where you collect information is that there just might be a long time and people tend to bug out of the process. But now with HTML5 and other technologies, it can be a much quicker flow. So I think that's less of a concern. So really where I think the slimming down needs to happen is in step 1, and after that I kind of tend to agree that probably the focus doesn't need to be there. I can say though that if your step 1 is 7 fields versus 1 field, you're almost always, now the last point I'll make, and I'm sorry I'm disagreeing with myself, you might make the argument, well, great, Josh, so I've gotten that email address, but it does me no good. I know that I need to convert people by phone. It's the only way it works. And in that case, fine, collect the information you need to up front. Did I just talk around the question?
No, because I think it is a complicated issue. Like, I'll give you an example with this webinar series. We ask, you all signed up for it. I mean, we ask, I think, 6 demographic questions, and then we ask straight up if you want a demo of Log My Calls. I mean, many would argue that's very early to ask for a demo of a product, but consistently through every webinar we've done, about 13 to 15% of people say yes to that question, which I think is actually a really high number. And then the other thing that's really interesting is we've experimented and cut out a lot of fields, and the registration rate numbers never really vary. It always depends on the audience and how the webinar was marketed, more so than the actual number of fields on the page. But to talk in a circle myself and sort of do the same thing, Josh, I would tend to agree that the fewer fields you can reasonably get, the better. That's what I think the data shows, but our data internally hasn't shown that. So yeah, and then someone compares this sort of the foot in the door method when it comes to collecting information. Maybe get a little bit and then ask for more later. I don't know if that may be a good way to think about it.
Right. And one final point is you have to know what the size of your business is. I think if you're a smaller business and you have less traffic coming through, I doubt that this will make as much of a difference as when you're at the point where you have, you're in the tens of thousands, and then even the thousands, then it probably starts showing up more. It's interesting though if you guys aren't seeing a difference, because I know you do have a fair amount of volume. And what's your metric, McKay, when you say you haven't necessarily seen a difference? Is the metric a paying customer?
No, the metric is the number of people that visit the webinar registration page. I'm just specifically talking about webinars. So the number of people that visit the webinar registration page versus those that sign up. So a true conversion rate for that registration page. And that conversion rate doesn't really vary dependent on the number of fields that we remove, add, questions we ask, etc. So I don't know if there's maybe like a certain range. If you ask between 5 and 7 questions, it's really going to be very similar. Yeah. Whereas if you were to cut it to like just email, it would go way up. We haven't done that extensive a testing, but it doesn't seem to make that much of a difference, at least in our experience.
Yep. Great.
One more question, then we'll let you go, Josh. How would you deal with collecting and aggregating actionable information on a fragmented and maybe even international audience? Do you have any specific rules for maybe collecting and aggregating that information?
Well, I mean, the first step is to, and is this, the first step is to segment, definitely. So language would be an obvious segmentation criteria. I mean, I think it depends on whether you have different products for each of these audiences, if there are different price points. But let's say we're using email to reach that varied audience, then I would definitely want to segment. I mean, I think generally, pretty much whenever there are obvious segmentation criteria, when there are real differences in how people behave based on demographic info, traffic source, what kind of device they're on, geography, it's a good idea to segment and really to the maximum ability we have time in the day to individualize how we're speaking to them.
Great. Josh, thanks for your time, sir. We appreciate it. That was really good. I enjoyed the back and forth, and I think the information was really useful. So we appreciate that. And everybody, thank you for attending today. The webinar recording will be sent to you tomorrow in the morning. And then to see that and probably about 60 or 70 other webinar recordings, go to logmycalls.com/webinar, logmycalls.com/webinar, and you'll be able to watch a ton of other webinars as well as register for the upcoming ones. You can watch the ones in the past without a form fill either as well, so that's useful. So Josh, thanks again. Any last words before we close today?
No, thank you everyone. Appreciate all the dialogue and conversation, and if you want to talk, reach out to me.
Thanks, Josh. We appreciate it. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, guys.